Excuse me, sir. Is the Earth round or flat?
Flat.
Why do you say that?
Because of the firmament.
What's the firmament?
Do you even read the Bible, bro?
What up, what up? You are now listening to Once Upon 785, the dopest podcast in the Midwest. I'm your host, Georgie350. Let's get into it, bitch. What up, and welcome to another episode of Once Upon 785. Today's date is December 25th, 2024. As always, I'm your host, Georgie350, and this is episode 26, The True Origins of Christmas. But, as always, before we start, let's do some quick announcements. I'm going to start first by plugging my TikTok, at Georgie350. Come hang out with me when I go live and check out all my videos. Also, I'm now on Cameo, also at Georgie350. So go check me out for any personalized videos you want. You already know. I got your back. As always, I have 3 places you can go get some dope clothing. First is habits365.com. Use promo code Georgie350 to get 15% off your order. Next, you can go to reaperapparelco.com and use promo code Georgie350 and get 10% off your order. And last but not least, you can go to cocoburry.com for all your premium sweatsuits, all different colors, and use, you guessed it, promo code Georgie350 to get 30% off your order. Also, check out the Platter Sun and Moon clock in the App Store. But if you would, use my referral link, or when you sign up, use code Georgie, Georgee, so they know who sent you. If you would like to watch the video version of the podcast instead of just listening, I do have 2 options. First, for $5 a month, you can go to patreon.com/onceupon785. You'll get the episodes before everyone else. You won't have to listen to any of this. No intro for Patreon. And Patreon will now be completely different. So if you use, it'll be, my bad. It'll be completely different. But you won't know that unless you sign up for Patreon. Or if you're listening on Spotify, you can just sign up directly through the app for my premium subscription plan, or just $2.99 and get the video version. Also, questions, comments, or if you want to come on the show, you can email me at onceupon785@proton.me. That's M as in Mary, E as in everybody. Lastly, if you want to support me and you enjoy the show, do me a favor and leave a rating or a review, or just share the episode with someone who you think might find it interesting. Regardless, I appreciate it greatly, because any way you can support helps me get closer to being able to hopefully do this full time someday. And now, let's get into today's episode, The True Origins of Christmas. All right. So, in honor of the Christmas spirit, I figure, why not just tell people the true origins of where Christmas really came from and what it really is? So, let's get into it. What is the true source of Christmas? 1 second, let me make this a little smaller. Does it hail from biblical teachings or pagan traditions? What is the authentic origin of Santa Claus, mistletoe, Christmas trees, holly wreaths, and the practice of gift giving? Many express concern about the concept of putting Christ back into Christmas. But was he ever truly there? The answers may be surprising. Why do people consider Christmas a joyous occasion? It certainly felt wonderful to me, shaped by the beliefs my parents imparted to me. I had no reason to question their teachings, which were passed down from their own parents. I never scrutinized the actual origins of Christmas. Most individuals rarely ponder the basis of their beliefs or actions. We exist in a world abundant with customs, yet few take the time to explore their origins. Generally, we accept them without scrutiny. Most follow the crowd simply because it's easy and seems natural. Let's take a closer look at the origins of Christmas. Why do people adhere to its associated customs? Why is it celebrated on December 25th? Did the early New Testament church observe it? What I'm about to tell you is all historical facts that, when considered together, present a comprehensive picture. Let's set aside assumptions that rely solely on what can be proven. All right, so the pagan origin. In 1990, the school board in Solon, Ohio, a suburb of Cleveland, prohibited all nativity and Christmas displays on school property, concluding they violated the separation of church and state. Outraged parents, believing the holiday was being taken from their children and the community, challenged this in court. Ultimately, the board lost the case. The community argued that Christmas is a universal tradition that transcends religious boundaries, rendering it secular and integral to cultures around the globe. No, not globe, around the flat plane. You know what I'm saying? The court ruling confirmed that Christmas has no Christian roots. Interestingly, the court also noted that the Bible reading and prayer clearly relate to Christianity, an intriguing acknowledgement. This conclusion stated that Christmas celebrations and nativity scenes could persist as they are not inherently part of Christianity or religion, while prayer and Bible reading, which are, must be excluded from schools. Most elements of Christmas observance trace back to Roman customs and beliefs. Take this statement from a prominent American newspaper, the Buffalo News, November 22, 1984. The earliest reference to Christmas being celebrated on December 25th comes from the 2nd century after Jesus' birth. It is likely that the initial Christmas celebrations stemmed from a harvest festival commemorating the winter solstice, the return of the sun, and honoring Saturn, the god of sowing. Saturnalia was a crazy time, often opposed by more austere leaders of the still minority Christian sect. One scholar suggests that Christmas emerged as a means to replace the worship of the sun with the worship of the sun. Now, that was the worship of the sun, S-U-N, with the worship of the sun, S-O-N. By 529 AD, when Christianity became the official state religion of the Roman Empire, Emperor Justinian established Christmas as a civic holiday. The celebration of Christmas peaked during the medieval period, characterized by excessive consumption and unparalleled revelry. I don't know. Consider these excerpts from the Catholic Encyclopedia 1911 edition under Christmas. Christmas was not among the earliest festivals of the Church. First evidence of the feast is from Egypt. Additionally, pagan customs surrounding the January calends gravitated towards Christmas. Origin. An early Catholic writer acknowledged in scriptures there is no record of anyone holding a feast or a grand banquet to celebrate their birthday. Only sinners like Pharaoh and Herod rejoice excessively over the day they entered this world. Emphasis, mine. The Encyclopedia Americana 1956 edition adds, Christmas was not celebrated in the early centuries of the Christian Church, as early Christians typically commemorated the deaths of notable individuals rather than their births. A feast was established in memory of this event, Christ's birth, in the 4th century. In the 5th century, the Western Church mandated that the celebration coincided with the day of the Mithric rites for the birth of the sun and the conclusion of Saturnalia. As there was no definitive knowledge regarding the day of Christ's birth, the origins of the contemporary Christmas celebration are unmistakable. Numerous additional sources could be cited, and we will revisit this topic later. Importantly, it wasn't until 300 years after Christ that the Roman Church began observing Christmas, and it was not until the 5th century that it became an official festival throughout the empire honoring Christ. Can Christ be honored by Christmas? The most prevalent argument regarding Christmas is that people have replaced ancient pagan traditions by claiming to focus on Christ. Many assert that they are honoring Christ through their Christmas celebrations. However, the issue is that God does not approve of this. In fact, he explicitly commands against it. Observing Christmas dishonors Christ, as he considers all aspects of it to be disdainable. We will soon explore the reasons behind this. Christ stated, "But in vain they do worship me, teaching for doctrines the commandments of men." Matt 15:9. Christmas is not a divine command, but a tradition created by humans. Christ further remarked, "Full well you reject the commandments of God, that you may keep your own tradition." Mark 7:9. Every year across the earth, hundreds of millions do exactly that on December 25th. We shall see that God clearly commands, "Follow not the way of the heathen." Yet most individuals do not fear God and are free to make their own choices. Humans are moral agents capable of either obeying or disobeying God. However, there is a warning for those who disregard the clear word of God. Was Christ born on December 25th? Christ's birth occurred in the fall. Many mistakenly believe he was born around the start of winter, December 25th. This is absolutely incorrect. The Adam Clark Commentary, Volume 5, page 370, New York edition notes, "It was a custom among Jews to send their sheep to the deserts about the Passover, early spring, and bring them home when the first rain began. The first rain started in early to mid-fall." Continuing with this quote, "During their time in the open, the shepherds watched them day and night. As the first rain began early in the month of March, which corresponds to the part of our October and November, starting sometime in October, we find that the sheep were kept out in the open country throughout the summer. Since these shepherds had not yet brought home their flocks, it is a credible argument that October had not commenced. Thus, our Lord could not have been born on December 25th, when no flocks were out in the fields, nor could it have been born later than September, as the flocks remained in the fields at night. For this reason, the nativity in December should be discarded. The nighttime feeding of the flocks in the fields is a chronological certainty. See the quotations from the Talmudus in Lightfoot. Luke 2:8 explains that when Christ was born, and there were in the same country shepherds abiding in the field, keeping watch over their flock by night. Note that they were abiding in the field, which did not happen in December. Both Ezra 10:9 through 13 and the Song of Solomon 2:11 indicates that winter was the rainy season, making it impossible for shepherds to stay in the cold, open fields at night. Excuse me. Countless encyclopedias confirm that Christ was not born on December 25th. Catholic Encyclopedia supports this claim. It is likely that Christ was born in the fall. A detailed explanation could further clarify this point. Now that we know December 25th does not coincide with Christ's birth date, where did the festival connect to this date? where did the festival connected to this date originate? Consider this quote under Christmas. In the Roman world, the Saturnalia, December 17th, was a time of merriment and gift exchange. December 25th was also celebrated as the birth date of the Iranian mystery god Mithra, the sun god of righteousness. During the Roman New Year, January 1st, homes were adorned with greenery and lights, and gifts were exchanged with children and the poor. To those practices were added the German and Celtic Yule rites as the Teutonic tribes migrated into Gaul, Britain, and Central Europe. Food and camaraderie, the Yule log and Yule cakes, greenery and fir trees, gifts, greetings, all represented different facets of this festive season. Fires and lights, symbols of warmth and enduring life, have long been associated with the winter festival, both pagan and Christian. Encyclopedia Britannica, 15th edition, volume 2, page 903. A final quote regarding the selection of December 25th as Christ's birth date is warranted. An article in the Toronto Star, December 1984, by Alan Edmonds states, "The Reformation cast a blight on Christmas. By then, clever ecclesiastical politicians had adopted the pagan midwinter festival as the alleged birth date of Jesus of Nazareth, adding a few other pagan elements to make their takeover more appealing. December 25th was not chosen for the celebration of Christ's birth, nor was it selected for its proximity to that event. Instead, it was picked because it is aligned with the pagan festival of Saturnalia, a celebration that merits through examination. Furthermore, the precise date of Christ's birth remains unknown. Although God could have revealed this date, he opted to keep it hidden from the world. Who was Saturn? Early references have touched upon the festival of Saturnalia. Let's delve deeper into the identity of Saturn. According to a December 1984 article in the Democrat and Chronicle, Rochester, New York, the Roman festival of Saturnalia, held from December 17th to 24th, prompted citizens to adorn their homes with greenery and lights, and give gifts to children and the less fortunate. The December 25th celebrations of Natalis Solis Invicti, or the birth of the unconquered sun, was established by Emperor Aurelian in AD 274 as a winter solstice observance, which was later appropriated by Christians to mark the birth of the Son of Light. Dr. William Gooch, chairman of the American Museum of Natural History's Hayden Planetarium, affirmed this historical perspective in a quote from December 18, 1989, in the Reporter Dispatch, a Westchester, New York newspaper. It goes as follows. The early Romans were not celebrating Christmas, but rather a pagan feast called Saturnalia. The festival occurred each year around the onset of winter or the winter solstice, when the sun reached its lowest point in the sky and the days began to lengthen, heralding a new season of growth. Many of the customs associated with Saturnalia parallel what many of us celebrate today. Illustrating how these holiday traditions were adopted, it is suggested that although Christ was not likely born in late December, the early Christians, while still a persecuted group, moved Christmas to coincide with Saturnalia to avoid drawing excessive attention to their observance. The Saturnalia honored Saturn, the fire god associated with sowing and growth, relying on the sun's warmth for agriculture activities. Worshippers celebrated this festival in winter to ensure the return of the sun and the event warmth needed for spring planting. The planet Saturn received its name in his honor due to its striking rings and reddish hue, which resonated with the symbolism of the fire god. Across various cultures, the concept of a sun/fire deity is prevalent. The Egyptians and sometimes the Romans referred to him as Vulcan. The Greeks recognized him as Kronos, and Phoenicians used both names, identifying him also as Saturn. The Babylonians called him Tammuz, Tammuz identified with Nimrod, resurrected through his son. Moloch, or Baal, a title the Druids used as well. These names all connect back to Nimrod, considered the progenitor of all Babylonian gods. Now, before we get into child sacrifice, I got a little TikTok video I'd like to share with you. So let me get the screen share going. What's going on? Okay, come on. Oh my God. What is going on? Here, 1 second.
History of Christmas, Bible and Pagans. We are looking at the history of Christmas and its pagan origins, and how this all connects to the biblical story of Jesus' birth. How could this even be possible? Although Christmas may look like a pure Christian holiday, just recently it was not so. In fact, it was just the opposite. We will seek to uncover the true depths of how influential pagan cultures is still influencing the world, and we will uncover to you all the surprising truths that we found. To understand the roots of Christmas, we need to travel back in time, long before the birth of Christ. Imagine ancient Europe. Cold, dark, and harsh winters ruled the land. Life wasn't easy, and every year, people faced a daunting challenge, making it through the season of scarcity. But amidst the struggle, there was hope. Hope that the sun, their source of life and warmth, would return stronger. This hope gave birth to traditions we still see today. In the northern regions, the celebration of Yule marked the winter solstice. On the darkest night of the year, they lit massive bonfires to honor the sun and keep its memory alive. Families brought home enormous logs, the famous Yule logs, and kept them burning as a symbol of light overcoming darkness. Sound familiar? That's the origin of the Yule log tradition we hear about today. Meanwhile, in southern Europe, the Romans celebrated their own midwinter festival, Saturnalia. This was a grand event dedicated to Saturn, the god of agriculture. It marked the end of the harvest and the beginning of winter rest. But Saturnalia was no quiet religious observance. It was a full-blown carnival. During Saturnalia, social norms were flipped upside down. Masters and slaves traded places, and the streets were filled with laughter, singing, and celebration. Homes were decorated with greenery. People feasted until they couldn't eat another bite. And yes, they even gave gifts, just like we do today. Many of the decorations we associate with Christmas, holly, mistletoe, and wreaths, come from these ancient traditions. They symbolized life and fertility during the bleakest time of year. But there's more to the story. In both the northern Yule and the Roman Saturnalia, these festivals weren't just about survival. They were about letting loose, breaking free from the rules of daily life. And sometimes, this freedom went too far. These celebrations could get wild. It was a time to indulge in food, drink, and, well, other behaviors that wouldn't be considered appropriate the rest of the year. Some of this still survives today. Ever heard of kissing under the mistletoe? That's an echo of these ancient fertility customs. As Christianity spread, these celebrations didn't disappear. Instead, they were transformed. The church had a choice: reject these beloved traditions or give them a new meaning. What happened next would change the course of history and the way we celebrate Christmas forever. The decorations we use today also have roots in these pagan festivals. Evergreens like holly and mistletoe were symbols of life and fertility. Mistletoe especially carried a sacred meaning. It was believed to have magical properties, bringing health, protection, and blessings. Over time, it became a symbol of love and romance. So, the next time you see mistletoe at a holiday party, remember, it's more than just a fun excuse to steal a kiss. It's a tradition that goes all the way back to these ancient festivals, where fertility and renewal were at the heart of the celebration. Then there was the feasting. People ate and drank more than they would all year. Imagine a table overflowing with roasted meats, freshly baked bread, and mugs of spiced wine. This was the ultimate indulgence, a time to eat, drink, and be merry without worrying about tomorrow. Sound familiar? Today, we carry on this tradition with Christmas feasts. The turkey, the desserts, and even the over-the-top portions all harken back to these ancient festivals. But in those days, it wasn't just about joy, it was about survival. People needed to believe that abundance was possible, even in the darkest of times. Unfortunately, with all this indulgence came excess. The rules of daily life were gone, and people let their impulses take over. Gambling was common, drinking was excessive, and self-control was forgotten. These festivals often turned into what we might call today a free-for-all. And yes, some of this still survives. Think of holiday office parties where people drink too much, or the push to buy, spend, and indulge during the Christmas season. These echoes of Yule and Saturnalia are all around us, even if we don't realize it. One particularly wild tradition was the election of a Lord of Misrule. This person was in charge of the chaos, encouraging everyone to let go of their inhibitions. For 12 days, the duration of these festivals, the Lord of Misrule could do as he pleased. This idea of a topsy-turvy world is the root of the 12 days of Christmas. But for early Christians, these wild festivals were a serious problem. How could they celebrate Christ while people around them indulged in such pagan customs? They had a choice: reject these traditions or find a way to redeem them. What happened next would forever change. In the early centuries, most Christians refused to celebrate these festivals. They saw them as pagan, indulgent, and completely opposed to the teachings of Christ. After all, how could a celebration filled with drunkenness, gambling, and wild behavior possibly honor God? Take, for example, the story of Pope Gregory in the 4th century. He sent a missionary named Augustine. Augustine was tasked with converting the local people to Christianity. But when he arrived, he quickly realized the challenge ahead of him. The people were deeply attached to their midwinter festivals, and no amount of preaching could convince them to give them up.
Let me stop the screen share. So how about that? Mind-blowing. Oh man, now let me find my place where I was. Of course, I would lose my spot. Now, if you're like me, this kind of sucks, you know? Church is a huge thing. I mean, especially with kids and everything. I mean, it's messed up that churches are still saying that this is Jesus's birthday when we all know it's not. Okay, here we go. All right. And here we are back at child sacrifice. Oh my God. Now I have to find it again. Oh man, here we go. I did not know that it was going to do this. My apologies. I will just go find it again, I guess. Regardless, you know, you can still, I mean, I don't know how to. Oh man, I passed it. I don't know what to do. I don't know if just toss it all together. Don't do Christmas. I mean, I enjoy getting gifts. I enjoy giving gifts. I mean, everything that we've ever been taught's a lie if you haven't figured that out yet. All right, here we go. Child sacrifice. The worship of the fire god, known as Nimrod, Saturn, Kronos, Moloch, and Baal, included a dreadful practice of child sacrifice. Okay. Included a dreadful practice, yes, of child sacrifice. Highlighted in The Two Babylons by Alexander Hislop, page 231. This aligns perfectly with the nature of the chief figure in the fire worship Nimrod, as the embodiment of the consuming fire to which human victims, particularly children, were offered in sacrifice, was seen as a great devourer of children. He was recognized as the origin of all Babylonian deities and referred to as Kronos. The well-known myth of Kronos involved him devouring his sons as soon as they were born. The story carries a deeper significance in relation to Nimrod. Here, let me slow this down. In relation to Nimrod, or the Horned One, it indicates that infants were the most prized offerings at his altar. Historical records provide substantial evidence. The Phoenicians, as noted by Eusebius, I don't know, sacrificed their cherished and only children to Kronos or Saturn annually. That's fucked up. But what motivated people to engage in such horrific acts of human sacrifice? What rationale could drive individuals to slaughter their own offspring? It was believed that he who approached the fire would receive a light from divinity, and that through divine fire, all the stains produced by generations could be purged. Thus, children were made to pass through the fire unto Moloch. Jeremiah 32:35. As unbelievable as it may sound, misguided individuals genuinely thought they were honoring their God by sacrificing their own innocent children. They believed that fire served to cleanse them of original sin. This belief gave rise to the pagan idea of spending time in purgatory to rid the soul of sin. Now, let's get into who was Nimrod. Let us delve deeper into the biblical figure of Nimrod. While we had previously identified him as one of the earliest false deities, there is more to uncover. Genesis 10:9 describes Nimrod as a mighty hunter before the Lord. indicating his attempt to usurp God's position. The renowned Jewish historian Josephus provides significant testimony regarding Nimrod's influence in the world after the flood. He writes, "He gradually transformed the government into a tyranny. He boasted that he would take vengeance on God if God decided to flood the world again by constructing a tower high enough to evade the waters. The masses were quick to follow Nimrod's plan, considering it cowardice to submit to God. Worshipped under various names, Nimrod stands as humanity's earliest and perhaps most significant rebel, represented in numerous false religions. Ancient Israel frequently succumbed to the altar of the false gods associated with Nimrod. Ezekiel 8:13 through 14 portrays Israel women weeping for Tammuz. This Tammuz, the god of fire, was viewed as Nimrod, and the origin of his name is intriguing. Tam means to make perfect, and Muz translates to fire. The implication aligns with previous insights. Interestingly, during the Iraq-Kuwait Desert Storm War, Saddam Hussein named one of his missiles Tammuz, clearly aware of its fiery connotation. Burned to Moloch. Let us examine how the people of Israel worshipped Baal/Moloch after straying from the true God. They constructed the high places of Baal in the valley of the son of Hinnom, causing their sons and daughters to pass through the fire to Moloch. This is something I did not command, nor did it ever enter my mind that they should commit such an abomination. Jeremiah 32:35. God explicitly states that such horrific acts never crossed his mind. They also built high places to Baal to burn their sons as burnt offerings unto Baal, which I did not command, nor did I speak it, nor did it ever enter my mind. Therefore, behold, the days come, says the Lord, that this place shall no longer be called Tophet, nor the valley of the son of Hinnom, but the valley of slaughter. Jeremiah 19:5. Verse 6 connects with the valley of Tophet or Hinnom to child sacrifice. Tophet means the drum, as the drums were used to muffle the cries of victims consumed by flames. A haunting quote from John Milton's Paradise Lost describes the dreadful god Moloch. First, Moloch, horrid king, beers mid with blood of human sacrifice and parents' tears, though for the noise of drums and timbers loud, their children's cries unheard that pass through the fire to his grim idol. Although many men claim they do not sacrifice their children to Moloch today, the implications are worth considering. In the New Testament, Stephen, a martyr, was stoned for, in part, calling out his audience for worshiping this vile idol. Acts 7:43. Upon ascending to the throne of Judah, righteous King Josiah destroyed the altars in the valley of Tophet, or Hinnom, same valley that Christ referred to as Hinnom, fire, in Mark 9:43 through 49. Soon after his reign began, he recognized the profound evil manifested in the practices occurring there. Now, let's talk about the Druids and human sacrifice. Many are familiar with the Druids, yet few comprehend their identity and historical significance. We will explore this further and connect them to well-known Christian traditions. First, however, we must outline the historical association with human sacrifice. Julius Caesar is the most recognized authority on the Druids. According to the Encyclopedia Britannica, the entry on Druids provides a clear description of who they were. Druids, the learned class among the ancient Celts, whose name means knowing or finding the oak tree. They appeared to have inhabited oak forests and served various roles, including priests, educators, and judges. The earliest records of the Druids date back to the 3rd century BC. They were responsible for public and private sacrifices, and many young men sought their guidance for instruction. They adjudicated disputes and assigned penalties. The fundamental belief of the Druids was in the immortality of their soul. They offered human sacrifices for those gravely ill or in peril during battle, utilizing large wicker figures filled with living individuals who would then be burned. While they typically selected criminals, innocent victims could also be sacrificed if deemed necessary. The Old Testament frequently records God's disapproval of Israel for adopting the practices of surrounding nations, shedding light on a troubling reality. Now, the concept of cannibalism. Another unsettling truth surrounding the origins of Christmas is related to the modern term cannibal. This practice is linked to a crucial role played by priests of Baal. It's essential to remember that in Hebrew, the word for priest is khan. Alexander Hislop notes in the Two Babylons, page 232, according to the principles of Mosaic law, likely derived from patriarchal faith, a priest must partake of whatever is offered as a sin offering. Numbers 9 and 10. Therefore, priests of Nimrod or Baal were required to consume human sacrifices. Consequently, cannibal, meaning priest of Baal, as synonymous with a devourer of human flesh in our language. The reality cannot be overlooked. Moreover, it is found that many civilizations have traditions involving cannibalism. Eric Ekholm wrote in the New York Times article, "What is the meaning of cannibalism?" Cannibalism has intrigued and repelled virtually every known society, including those said to have practiced it. This article also indicated that most cultures attach divine significance to the act of cannibalism. What about the Santa myth? You ready for this? Have you considered that you might inadvertently be harming your children today? And though your involvement with Christmas, despite your sincere intention to focus on Christ, parents often justify their indulgence in the Christmas myth as a gift to their children. Christmas customs predominantly center around kids, making them the focal point of the celebrations. I can attest to this from my own experience of all the Christmases that I've been through, and all the ones that I've had with my kids. Some years ago, a priest in New Jersey informed his Sunday school class that Santa was a fictional character. The backlash from parents and his superiors was immediate, accusing him of having killed Santa, destroyed family tradition, and usurped family authority. As a result, he was officially reprimanded for being overzealous and insensitive. His offense: he spoke the truth. Langer's Encyclopedia of World History states in the article Santa, that Santa was a common name for Nimrod throughout Asia Minor. He was also the fire god who descended down chimneys in ancient pagan beliefs, and the same deity whom infants were sacrificed and consumed among those who were once followers of God. Currently, Santa Claus is derived from Saint Nicholas. Washington Irving in 1809 transformed the original stern bishop of this name into the cheerful, jolly Saint Nick in his work Knickerbocker, History of New York. Most of Americans' other Christmas traditions are even more recent than this. Old Nick has historically been recognized as a term for the devil. In Revelation 2:6 and 15, we encounter a reference to the doctrine of the Nicolantes, which Christ explicitly states he detests. Analyzing the term Nicolante reveals it means follower of Nicholas. Nikos translates to conqueror, destroyer, while Laos stands for people. Hence, Nicolantes are those who follow the conqueror or destroyer, Nimrod. Should you have thought that participating in Christmas was a harmless Christian tradition, considering this reality carefully? It is scripture. It is script. It is scriptural to exchange gifts. Merchants frequently report that more than 60% of their yearly retail sales occur during Christmas shopping season, indicating a significant amount of gift purchasing. Many people today associate the practice of gift giving with the biblical account that the three wise men, although the Bible does not specify their number, presenting gifts to Christ. But is this belief accurate? What is the true origin of gift exchange, and what insights does the Bible provide regarding it? According to the Bibliotheca Sacra, the exchange of gifts among friends is a universal trait of both Christmas and the Saturnalia, and it appears that Christians have adopted this custom from pagans, as Tertullian's Admonides suggests, Volume 12, page 153 through 155. Interestingly, just like many other facets of Christmas, this supposedly Christian tradition has no biblical roots. It is ironic that people enjoy believing they're mimicking the actions of the wise men who presented gifts to Christ, when in reality, they are mostly giving gifts to one another. Such hypocrisy. In the process, Christ is often forgotten. The Bible teaches that Christians do not celebrate birthdays, a principle supported by numerous scriptures. However, imagine a birthday celebration held in your honor only to find out that everyone is exchanging gifts among themselves, leaving you excluded. It would indeed seem selfish and inconsiderate. In fact, many individuals give gifts during Christmas primarily out of the expectation of receiving gifts in return. Facts. Now, let's take a closer look at the wise men who offered gifts to Jesus. The relevant scripture can be found in Matthew 2:1 through 11. Now, when Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea in the days of Herod the king, behold, there came wise men from the east to Jerusalem, saying, Where is he that is born King of the Jews? And when they come into the house, they saw the young child with Mary his mother, and fell down and worshipped him. And when they had opened their treasures, they presented unto him gifts, gold and frankincense and myrrh. It is commonly assumed that these gifts were birthday presents for the baby Jesus. However, that is not what the Bible conveys. Firstly, it is essential to acknowledge that the gifts were indeed given directly to Jesus. There was no exchange among the wise men themselves or with others in his presence. The gifts were presented unto him, and they arrived well after his birth, further ruling out the notion of them being birthday presents. In ancient Eastern customs, presenting gifts when approaching a king was a long-standing tradition. The wise men recognized that they were in presence of the King of Jews. The Bible contains numerous examples of individuals sending gifts to kings or presenting them upon entering their realms, a practice still seen today with ambassadors visiting world leaders. Moreover, the Adam Clarke Commentary, Volume 5, page 46 states, verse 11, They presented unto him gifts. The people of the East never approached the presence of kings and great personages without a present in their hands. This custom is frequently mentioned in the Old Testament, still prevails in the East, and can be found in some of the newly discovered South Seas islands. It is evident that presenting gifts to kings was customary. Now, the origin of the Christmas tree. No discussion of Christmas would be complete without delving into the Christmas tree. While we have alluded to it, we shall now focus on the topic. The modern Christmas tree traces roots back to Germany, which in turn inherited the concept from the Romans, who learned it from the Babylonians and Egyptians. According to an ancient Babylonian fable, an evergreen tree sprang out of a dead tree stump, with the old stump symbolizing the deceased Nimrod and the new evergreen signifying Nimrod's resurrection as Tammuz. Among the Druids, the oak held sacred significance. While the palm was revered in Egypt, and the fir tree was decorated with red berries during the Saturnalia in Rome. Frederick J. Haskins answers to questions notes, the Christmas tree originates from Egypt and predates the Christian era by a considerable margin. Did you realize that the Christmas tree existed long before Christianity? Many of the elements of Christmas are not found in the Bible. This is because they are not prescribed by God as part of how He desires people to worship Him. However, the Christmas tree is explicitly mentioned in the Bible. Refer to Jeremiah 10:2-5 for more details. Thus, the Lord declares, do not adapt the practices of the nations, for the rituals of these peoples are pointless. One chops down a tree from the forest, the work of a craftsman, using an axe. They adorn it with silver and gold. They secure it with nails and hammers so that it will not move. They stand upright like palm trees, yet they cannot speak. They must be carried because they cannot walk. Do not be afraid of them, for they can do no harm, nor can they do any good. The straightforward depiction of the modern Christmas tree is unmistakable. God explicitly calls it the practice of the nations. He clearly instructs people not to adopt the ways of the nations, labeling these customs as pointless. A significant statement follows, O Lord, I realize the path of man is not within him. It is not for the man who walks to direct his own steps. It is essential for God to teach humanity how to live, as people cannot discern his ways alone in Jeremiah 10. There is no justification, as some have attempted to argue to say that because these idols are powerless on their own, having a Christmas tree isn't prohibited. God condemns the practice of erecting pagan Christmas trees with the clear biblical command, the origins of holy wreaths, Yule logs, and mistletoe. The Encyclopedia Americana notes, the holly, the mistletoe, the Yule log are remnants of pre-Christian traditions, essentially pagan practices. The Yule log was traditionally associated with a rite of Petunic nature worship. Frederick Haskin also states, the custom of the Christmas wreath is believed by scholars to be traceable to the pagan practice of adorning buildings and placing in places of worship during the feast that coincides with our Christmas celebration. The Encyclopedia Britannica under Celestials reveals the background of the holly wreath. European pagans brought holly branches into their homes, offering them to nature spirits as shelters from harsh winter. During the Saturnalia, the Roman winter festival, holly branches were exchanged as signs of friendship. The earliest Roman Christians are believed to have used holly as decoration during the Christmas season. There are many varieties of holly, nearly all of which have male and female forms like blue prince and blue princess, or blue boy and blue girl, or China boy and China girl. Without the presence of nearby male plant to pollinate, female holly plants cannot produce berries. This explains how the holly wreath became associated with pagan rituals as a symbol of friendship and fertility. For many Christians, Christmas feels incomplete without the traditions of kissing under the mistletoe. This pagan practice naturally flourished during a night of festive celebration, often marred by drunkenness. Like today, this kissing typically marked the beginning of Saturnalia/Christmas festivals. On oak trees, which were sacred to the Druids. The ancient Celts would give mistletoe as an herbal remedy to promote fertility in animals. It is still referred to as an all-healer in Celtic tradition. Much like mistletoe, holly berries were regarded as sacred to the sun god. The original sun log evolved into what we now call the Yule log. Yule simply means wheel. Long a representation of the sun in pagan traditions, it's no surprise that many today refer to the sacred Yule tide season. The blending of the true worship with false customs. The modern term for combining false pagan practices with the worship of the true God is called syncretism. I don't know. I'm sorry. Those who engage in this during ancient Israel faced death penalty. Leviticus 8:21 and 29. It was treated very seriously. An intriguing insight into how Israel viewed their beliefs, thinking they were worshiping God as a collective nation, is found in 2 Kings 17:33. They feared the Lord, yet served their own gods, following the customs of the nations from which they had been taken. Did you understand this? Yes, they acknowledged the true God while worshiping other deities. This explains why the following verse 34 notes that they truly fear not the Lord in the manner commanded by God. This reflects how God perceives the actions of people today, regardless of what those emulating ancient pagan practices believed about their own behavior. Verse 30 states that these practices were learned from their interactions with the men of Babylon, whose principal deity was Nimrod, now recognized as the same entity. God's warning to Israel in Deuteronomy 12:29 through 31 was quite specific, and it's clear why he issued it. When the Lord your God has destroyed the nations before you and you take possession of their land, be careful not to be ensnared by following them after they have been destroyed from before you. And do not inquire after their gods, saying, How did these nations serve their gods? I will do the same. You shall not act like this towards the Lord your God for every abomination that he hates. They have done to their gods. Even their sons and daughters have been burned in the fire to their gods. Many verses like Deuteronomy 12 warrant through examination. The true God was aware that the worship of other gods inevitably led to the sacrifice of children. Deuteronomy 12:32 emphasizes that God desires us not to blend his teachings with false practices. Whatever I command you, be careful to observe it. You shall not add it nor take from it. These are God's clear instructions to anyone who believes they can combine the abhorrent traditions of outright paganisms with an assumed focus on Christ. Pagan practices of ancient Israel and modern customs. Deuteronomy 12:2 through 4 provides vital context. God clearly states you must completely destroy all of the places where the nations you are about to dispose worship their gods. On the high mountains, on the hills, and under every green tree, you must tear down their altars, and you must burn their groves with fire. You shall not do this to the Lord your God. Note God's reference to every green tree and their groves. There are at least 10 similar verses in the Old Testament linking green trees with idolatry. Historians suggest that green refers specifically to evergreens, which retain their foliage year-round. Let's take a closer look at the historical origins of some Saturnalia customs still observed today. Consider this unsettling quote from the Dictionary of Greek and Roman Antiquities. Oscilla, 3rd edition, Volume 2. People across all social ranks dedicated themselves to feasting and merriment. Friends exchanged gifts, and crowds filled the streets shouting, Lo Saturnalia. An offering was made beneath a decorated evergreen tree, as noted by the pagan poet Virgil. Bigarnus and mask, referred to as oscilla, were hung on the tree, akin to the modern Christmas decorations. History confirms there is no doubt that these oscilla are remnants of human sacrifice. Doesn't this sound familiar? Gifts, street singing, evergreen trees, decorations, offerings beneath the tree, revelry, feasting. They may appear delightful, but they signify practices that are generally abominable. Contemporary Australia resemble plump little angels when hung on a tree. I put these little angel babies on our tree myself as a child, believing they were angelic. How mistaken I was. Do you think any of your friends understand what they truly symbolize? Probably not, but that does not diminish the seriousness of it in God's view. And I just want to take 1 second. All right, my apologies. It was getting pretty late last night, so I ended up passing out, but back again to finish the episode. And we'll pick up right where we left off. The blending of outright paganism into the church. Another source sheds light on how this heritage has been practiced so innocently by millions, yet remains far from innocent in God's eyes. Here's a quote from the Encyclopedia Britannica, 15th edition, Volume 10, pages 1062 through 3. Christianity, through a complex and gradual process, became the official religion of the Roman Empire. For a period, coins and other monuments continued to associate Christian doctrines with sun worship, to which Constantine had formerly been devoted. Even when this phase concluded, Roman paganism retained other lasting influences, both large and small. The church calendar incorporates many remnants of pre-Christian celebrations, particularly Christmas, which combines elements from the Saturnalia and the birthday of Mithra. Ultimately, the core of Western Christianity derived its structure and stability from ancient Rome. A respected authority like the Encyclopedia Britannica openly admits that the Saturnalia and ancient Rome played a significant role in shaping the discipline, stability, and shape of Western Christianity. This acknowledgement is truly remarkable. The following quote reveals how this pagan festival infiltrated the Christian world. It comes from the New Sheath Herzog Encyclopedia of Religious Knowledge under the entry Christmas. The extent to which the festival's date was influenced by the pagan Brumala, December 25th, following the Saturnalia, December 17th through 24th, which celebrated the shortest day of the year and the new sun. It's difficult to determine. The pagan Saturnalia and Brumalia were so deeply rooted in popular customs that they could not be easily eliminated by Christian teachings. The pagan festivities, with their exuberance and merriment, were so well liked that Christians found a reason to continue celebrating them with minimal changes in spirit and style. Christian leaders in the West and Near East protested the frivolity of which Christ's birthday was observed, while Christians in Mesopotamia accused their Western counterparts of idolatry and sun worship for adapting this pagan festival as Christian. Another source sheds light on how the Roman Church institutionalized Christmas as an official celebration. The 1946 edition of the Encyclopedia Britannica states, Christmas was not one of the earliest festivals of the Church. Some Latins, as early as 354, may have shifted the date of the celebration from January 6th to December 25th, which coincided with the Mithric feast, or the birthday of the unconquered sun. That's S-U-N. The Syrians and Armenians who adhered to January 6th accused the Romans of sun worship and idolatry, arguing that December 25th celebration was coincided by disciples of Cerinthus. Thus, a pagan festival that predated Christ's birth was integrated into recognized Christianity. Interestingly, even the Puritans of the 17th century New England recognized the problematic nature of Christmas. In 1659, they legally prohibited its observance through the Massachusetts Bay Colony, imposing fines and imprisonment for those caught celebrating it. It wasn't until almost 200 years later, in 1856, that people stopped working on Christmas in Boston. The Puritans understood its origins and labeled it heathen, Papist idolatry, those who change times and laws. The prophet Daniel 7:8 speaks of a little horn, which, in Daniel 7:25, shall speak great words against the Most High, and think to change times and laws. This little horn represents a powerful religious authority that attempts to impose its own interpretation of dates and celebrations upon an unsuspecting world, substituting it for God's clear instructions. The Hebrew word for change means to transform, alter, or set. The term for times refers to appointed occasions, seasons, or times. The word for laws indicates decrees or laws of God. Together, this phrase signifies an authority that aims to transform appointed occasions and seasons within the law of God. Clearly, Christmas exemplifies this transformation where God's directives have been replaced by human religious traditions. The following quote highlights this issue and originates from the Encyclopedia Britannica under Christianity. Thus, the Easter liturgy has been developed more highly in the Eastern Orthodox Church, and the Christmas liturgy more prominently in the Roman Catholic Church. The Christian calendar is one of the most widely accepted institutions. The 7-day week and the rhythm of Christian festivals have been embraced even by most non-Christian countries. Despite persistent efforts to induce a shifting work week, the 7-day cycle with the work-free Sunday has proven resilient even with communist states that embrace an atheist worldview. Even in atheistic circles and organizations globally, Christian holidays are widely celebrated as work-free days, especially Christmas. It is indeed the ecclesiastical politicians who have sought to impose the contemporary Christian calendar on an unaware world. These leaders have aimed to change times and laws. The dangerous power of lies. Satan is often referred to as the destroyer, Revelations 9:11. Nimrod, Saturn, Moloch, Baal, much like Saturn, represents the fire god known for destroying and consuming innocent children. The real Jesus Christ was never part of, nor will he ever be integrated into Christmas. He cannot be returned to a space where he has never existed. However, the god of this world, Satan, 2 Corinthians 4:4, has always been a part of Christmas. He is its originator. The true God commands that we must worship him in spirit and in truth. John 4:23-24. This command does not align with the widespread lies surrounding Christmas and Santa Claus that children so readily accept. 1 Timothy 4:2 cautions against those speaking lies and hypocrisy, having their conscience seared with a hot iron. Parents can unintentionally inflict harm on their own children to the point of numbing their understanding through the deception surrounding Christmas. There is no safety in numbers for those who celebrate Christmas because Satan, referred to as the father of lies and a murderer from the beginning, John 8:44, has deceived the whole world, Revelations 12:9. Take a moment to read this verse and recognize that Christmas undoubtedly serves as a testament to the profound deception. However, Christ describes his church as a little flock in Luke 12:32. Numerous verses reinforce this. The church does not enjoy the large following of the widely respected and established traditions of Christianity in this world. Another Jesus. There is another significant issue with the notion of putting Christ back in Christmas. It's a serious one. The Jesus that people focus on during this season is not the genuine Jesus Christ of the Bible. Many have been led to believe there is only one Jesus Christ. Yet, God's word warns of a counterfeit, a substitute Christ that can be traced throughout history. The evidence? The Apostle Paul cautioned against another Jesus. Understand what's at stake here. First, consider Paul's introduction as he prepares for the warning. But I fear, least by any means, as the serpent, or Satan, deceived Eve through his cunning, so your minds should be corrupted from the simplicity that is in Christ. 2 Corinthians 11:3. Now, let's look at the actual warning in the following verse. For if he that comes preaches another Jesus, whom we have not preached, or if you have received another spirit, which you have not received, or another gospel, which you have not accepted, you might well tolerate him. 2 Corinthians 11:4. The Corinthians appear to accept this without much resistance. Paul, inspired by the true Jesus Christ of the Bible, felt compelled to highlight the danger of inadvertently following another Jesus. Consider this. Most individuals may have never contemplated the presence of a false Jesus, that there exists a different and deceptive Christ. Matthew 24:23-24, identified as another Jesus. Historically, this Jesus has even swayed the understanding of genuine Christians. This is clear, yet the subtle of how this occurs and how it has unfolded in history is so deceptive and so seductive that even true Christians can unknowingly begin to worship this so-called Jesus. This was the situation faced by the Corinthians. People can engage in forms of worship that are vastly different from their sincere beliefs or intentions. Today's Bible believers might think they are honoring their true Savior, while in fact worshiping a false Savior, another Jesus. Traditionally, Christianity largely venerates Nimrod, Saturn, Moloch, and Baal. The modern emphasis on the mother-child dynamic of the Mary Jesus, along with the reverent adoration of Mary by millions, parallels the relationship between Nimrod and his mother, Semiramis, in a way that is impossible to overlook. Here's the key point being explained. Many people talk about putting Christ back into Christmas. This phrase is repeated yearly from countless pulpits and elsewhere. But the true Christ was never present. Just as a person cannot return to a room they have never entered, Jesus Christ cannot be put back into an event he has never been a part of. In fact, detest. See Mark 7:7. The Jesus these preachers and religious leaders reference is another Christ associated with another gospel, another spirit, the Christmas spirit, which brings entirely different doctrines and teachings. Do you see the connection? What should you do? Finally, let's consider what God instructed his people regarding their actions and how they should teach their children. Recall Jeremiah 7:31, where God condemned Israel for sacrificing their children in the valley of Tophet. 8 verses earlier, God clarified his requirements. But this thing I commanded them, saying, Obey my voice, and I will be your God, and you shall be my people, and walk in all the ways that I have commanded you, that it may be well with you. But they did not listen, but followed the imagination of their evil hearts. Human beings often shy away from obeying God. Romans 8:7. They prefer to pursue their own imagination. They fail to realize that God desires for their lives to flourish. He wants happiness, joy, and blessings to enrich people's lives. All these stem from obedience to him. God guided Modus to emphasize to parents the serious responsibility they hold in the education of their children. Consider his directives in Deuteronomy 6:1, verses 6 through 7, 20 through 21, and 25. Now these are the commandments which the Lord your God command you to teach, so that you may observe them in the land you are about to enter. And these words that I command you today shall be in your heart. You shall teach them diligently to your children, talking of them when you sit in your house, when you walk by the way, when you lie down, and when you rise up. And when your son asks you in the future, saying, what do the testaments, statutes, and judgments the Lord our God has commanded you mean? You shall tell your son, we were Pharaoh's slaves in Egypt, and the Lord brought us out of Egypt with a mighty hand, and it will be our righteousness if we carefully observe all these commandments before the Lord our God, as he has commanded us. God liberated Israel from Egypt, from bondage, removing them from the surrounding world's customs and revealing his law to them. He desires that his people do not revert to the traditions and practices from which he has called them. When all of the intertwined customs laden with the symbolism and venerating an ancient human-made deity are imparted, this does not reflect true worship of the Creator. We have not recognized Christmas as of Babylon. Jesus stated twice in Matthew 7:16 and 20, you shall know them by their fruits. Everything people express or do, whether good or bad, yields consequences. The repercussions of Christmas are dire. This season leads to increased rates of adultery, loneliness, jealousy, drunkenness, family strife, and accumulating debt that often lingers until March. This issue is so widespread that nearly all churches commonly report a drop in income during this time. As ironic as it is, as individuals recover from their excessive spending, the real Christmas spirit. I did quotes if you're not watching. The prophet Isaiah was inspired to write, cry aloud, spare not, lift up your voice like a trumpet, and show my people their transgression. I have done just that. Now that you have encountered the plain truth about the actual origins of Christmas, what will be your response? The following excerpt is taken from the booklet, The Plain Truth About Christmas, by Herbert W. Armstrong. It encapsulates the key message of this booklet. Christmas has devolved into a commercial season, fueled by the most extensive retail advertising campaigns of the year. You'll find a disguised Santa Claus in numerous stores. Advertisements keep us misled about the so-called beautiful Christmas spirit. Newspapers benefiting from these ads print flowery editorials that extol the pagan season and its spirit. A gullible populace has become so enriched in this deception that many take offense when confronted with the truth. Yet, the Christmas spirit is cultivated each year not to honor Christ, but to sell products. Like all of Satan's illusions, it masquerades as angel of light, deceptively appearing virtuous. Billions of dollars are spent during this merchandising frenzy each year while the mission of Christ suffers. It's an integral part of the economic system of Babylon. We profess to be Christian nations, yet we find ourselves in Babylon, as foretold by biblical prophecy, and we remain oblivious. Come out of her, my people, so that you do not share in her sins and do not receive any of her plagues, soon to come, as warned in Revelations 18:4. This year, instead of engaging in gift exchanges, consider allocating those funds towards God's work. And that is the end of that. So, a lot to take in. Pretty mind-blowing. Definitely, let me know what you think. Let me see if I can go ahead and get my closing put up so I can do my little outro. Because, that's just so crazy. I honestly don't even know what to do, how to tell my parents or anything like that because they are firm Bible believers. But, you know, after so many years of indoctrination, it's pretty hard to try to convince someone that everything that they've learned is wrong. But I mean, I feel like people are learning more and more every day about all the lies that we have to go through as not just Christians, but I mean, Americans and all over the world, really. I mean, I grew up my whole life with the story of Christmas and the birth of Jesus. And, it is a lot to handle when you find out that it's all one big giant lie and that you're actually pretty much doing exactly what Satan wants you to do. And that's fall away from God. But with that, Merry Christmas. If that's still your thing. And if you enjoyed the episode as much as I did, and you don't mind, go ahead and leave a 5-star rating or a review on whatever platform you're listening on. That helps me out a lot. But just know, you don't have to do either of those things. I just want you to enjoy the show. Again, check out the affiliates and use promo code Georgie350 for some dope clothing. Don't forget, for $5 a month, you can watch the video before anyone else on patreon.com/onceupon785 or Spotify, and you can get the video version for just $2.99. You can also listen to my podcast on YouTube now. You're welcome. My email is onceupon785@proton.me. You can now find me on Cameo. Catch me on TikTok every week. But as always, I'm your host, Georgie350. Let's hit him with the outro. Bitch. Happy holidays.
Yeah. Middle of the map, can't swear I'm at. You can say I'm whack, it's just not a fact. Can tell if I'm awake or I'm in a dream. I just know I'm geeked on amphetamines. Never was a habit, now I gotta have it. Never was a fiend, now I am an addict. Or was a habit, now I gotta have it. Never was a fiend.